Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the McConaughey at YouTube with another discussion video. With a lot of the attention that's going on, we will be talking about the 2017 Gunpla Builders World Cup judging, especially regarding the championships that's just occurred and concluded in Japan for the world title. It's public criticism that's widely made, as well as misconceptions about elements of that afjudging and the criticism. Many videos on YouTube as well as Facebook afterwards, or after the heat of individual national Gunpla Builders World Cups, as well as the Japan ones, has been spreading a lot of buzzwords and generally going into more opinions and observations and experiences. Very few is sort of citing actual evidence in the collecting of judging scores, feedback given, or rule sets that are being taken off the websites. So we're not getting a lot of things that are fact. There is a lot of the base that the judging is very surprising. The models that are winning is not very expected, and that due to everything being very mixed, very vague, no one knows where to get the idea of what is the process of going from entering the competition to enjoy it, to trophy hunting, to winning, and what is required to be a winning model, and what is the judges exactly looking for. So people are pointing in all sorts of directions, from that the judges are very inexperienced, they're not performing their job properly, to certain styles or modelers being preferred, or preferential treatment being distributed. We'll be cleaning all that sort of stuff up. Unfortunately, what I blame is no one's at fault in making this content, these videos, these posts. We are in a different age, from forums to social media. There are a lot of good information out there about people's experience and work in progresses in entering the Gunpla Builders World Cup, scattered websites, scattered blogs, how they've built their models, what they experienced over their diaries, and chats and feedback from the judges. And you have a lot of people who have a platform with the right amount of followers, or in the right groups on Facebook and YouTube. And these voices who are getting a lot of attention is drowning out those who have the authority to speak on the subject. Now, I will absolutely say, as a FYI, I'm not the biggest authority. I'm not an expert on the Gunpla Builders World Cup. I've entered it for 7 years. I have not placed or won above 5th position when they did the top 10 rankings. I've never won 1st, 2nd and 3rd. I have had access to judges and people that won and got the chance to interview, talk, whatnot. But at least I feel I'm in the position that I could clear up what's absolutely outrageous, and that's just simply putting people in the wrong direction of what is exactly going on. My opinion on the subject. Now, this is the difference from what's opinion and what's fact, as well as the experience that I have behind me, and the people that I've exchanged, talked to, and whatnot in discussion. That the judging criteria is extremely vague. We're broken up in a point system. We've got 3 subjects: the build elements, the painting element, the idea element, and generally what's in a violation of those, as well as the rule set, which we'll get into, is being deducted. And the model with the least deductions, or the highest point, is what is going to be generally put up as a placing model, and then decide of what's winning, as well as what models get a look in to be judged and what models don't. It's very vague. There's just a greater list of what the judges are looking for, and we don't know it. It's not made public on any of the official Bandai websites. It's not made known on any of the outlets that the judges and anyone involved in the Gunpla Builders World Cup blog or talk about or share with the community. And that the modelling experience, competition modelling experience, what is ideally a competition winning model, or what is acceptable in competitions and looked for and what's not, differs from community to community. The Japanese competition modelling scene is just grossly different to the rest of the world. The rest of the world has picked up, or the English speaking world follows the whole IPMS structure of itemizing each subject, judging it on technical build sets, and then having a look at the world of that subject and its reference material, tallying it up, and who has the greatest amount of points is itemized up. It's not a case of these three look really good, we'll study them and put onto a pedestal. But that goes into the difference between a sanctioned modelling event by selected chosen peers over a sponsored event, which we will also get into that. Justin Builds a YouTube channel also talks about that from his understanding of a US Gunpla mindset to other nations and comparing it to the expectations of the Japanese judges. Now, because we are looking at what a community expectation set is and not being communicated from community to community through the Bandai brand, and that the judging is very, very vague from taking off points. We're not sure if it's idea, if it's technical or whatnot. The judges automatically by default lean on their personal preferences, what they like to see in the model, how it's based, if it's the technical abilities, if it's how artistic it is, if it's telling a story or not, if it's based, if it's judging the model alone, if it's in the grander scheme with a diorama. All of that is my opinion that is an element of issue in the competition. Absolute lack of communication, lack of information of what is expected as modelers to put in our work to have a fighting chance when competing among our peers, if we're just doing it for fun and putting something out there to have an idea where we're sitting in the pecking order, or how our hobby goes compared to other people in the community, from your YouTubers, your professional modelers, your recreational modelers, your beginners. It's more of a gamble than people's understanding of what's expected and the skill level and effort put into the work. So it's an absolute gamble, and it sort of leaves out an idea that the people who win these competitions are the community's best modelers or the world's best modelers, where the fact that the judges are looking at other things and disqualifying or penalising models that are technically very, very well built but doesn't fall into a set of ideologies. So that all goes down to miscommunication of criteria. Now, what is fact? This is evidence that I've found, put forward and put in the public sphere with a theory behind it, that the rules are absolutely inappropriate for a competition and extremely vague. There was some sort of very basic set that was produced when the competition was very, very new. You had a list of about 5-10 itemised rules that met the conditions for Bandai to judge models that they manufacture, sell and promote, and whoever does the best job. So just a few things that will disqualify you if it's bootleg, aimed rage for each of the categories, and a couple of restrictions for display, such as the model not being far too massive and fitting in the case. As the years have gone on, they've added other things such as intellectual property being added to the Gundam models, making it very clear that it's only Gundam models in the Gundam universe, and other Bandai IP or property or model brands are not being included. And what makes it that if you're creating something that's out of the Gundam universe opposed to your own personal ideas. So rules are flirting with criteria, it's flirting with how to build your models and its restrictions, it's flirting on theories and what's idealistic and what's not. It's going into age, it's going into a little bit of legal stuff such as what is the event responsible for, what's not. Things such as it's just absolutely forbidden, like scratch building, 3D printing, knockoff models that are not produced by Bandai being entered, resin casting, all that sort of stuff. These have been chopped and changed in and out of the rule set all the way from when it converted from the Gunpla Builders World Cup, where it used to be the Bakuk competition. It was just Bandai model kits and that, a handful of countries, and now we've got more countries involved. The rules are translated directly from Japanese. There are major subheaders, and then what is itemized in dot point lists of what you should be aware if you don't want your model outright disqualified, or if you're going to be named and shamed and thrown out of the event, or if you're just going to lose a few points and lose out a chance of placing because it's an aspect that you need to incorporate in your model or not incorporate in your model. One of the issues I had with my 3D printing problem for the Australian heat was Australia reached out to Bandai and said, is there any changes to the rules? Could we get a set of it? So we're going to put it in English, we're going to post it on our websites. Used to, the rules were hosted on a website that the country was organising. They'll collect the entries and you'd go to the site that country was running it. Bandai is centralising everything for the first time off the HobbyNet website, and they've got the rules posted there. But because they're honing it together, they're still allowing the rules to be put on the website and still made official by the wholesaler and organisers of that national outlet. Now, the Australians put the rules up for 2016. Much later down the track, the Japanese put out the rules that were 2017 translated from Japanese into English. And it was made clear 1 month out that the Japanese rules would set in, which there was quite a few itemised options that were completely changed at short notice. Now, to be fair to Bandai, one of the rules stated is that they can change the rules at not inform anyone, not get anyone's consent at any point in time, including the day of the competition. They can do that, but it does not necessarily make it fair when there is an expectation and idea that people spend time in purchasing, building, painting, entering, and that people look into the time management of finishing their project. It's not unheard of or imaginable that a good 6 months of time is spent from planning to having a finished product. Some people are able to throw something together in a couple of months. Other people plan, build and process a whole thing throughout the whole year. So they've started to plan, build and construct well before that year rule set is put out. There is, from that discussion, there is no dialogue between the countries that are hosting the event and Bandai. Eventually they just send their promotional material, their representatives, their judge, they run the event, they run off and expect that the representation of that country that won goes to Japan at the end of the year to represent. There's no dialogue of how competitions are run in Japan and an idea and explained to that community. Now granted, Mr. Kawaguchi has put effort into that. He's come to Australia, ran a few panels, made himself available to give feedback to anyone who approached and watched that panel, which would be under 100 people watching it, and probably just a couple of dozen people that went up to him and asked. So that's all the influence he was able to issue out, though the rest of Bandai has not put out any hobby net posts, information, emails, videos. There's 1,000 platforms that Bandai has to put out information about the Gunpla Builders World Cup that wouldn't cost them any money and just make it absolute sanctioned updates. But there's just been no effort or resources put into that. Anyone who's spent time on the HobbyNet website has seen that it's very sloppily put together and not well written out in the way of the translation from Japanese to English. It's quite broken, and that brokenness is also injected into the rules that makes it impossible for us to decipher and spend time and money in building a model. And this is probably the absolute biggest issue in the whole competition, in my opinion, as absolute fact, demonstrated and shown. And then what the judges' criteria of those three elements, which is interwove and mixed up in such a confusing manner with the rules, you're only got the idea of be at this place at so time, bring a model of a certain size that's a Gundam, and good luck, we've got an idea what we want as a winner, but we are not going to tell you, not because they're being malicious, but probably they know it's obvious what they're looking at, but they don't know it's not obvious to the rest of us. And it may even be obvious in Japan because there's magazines and word of mouth and whatnot, but that information just does not transfer along. And once this is made clear and this fact is communicated to Japan, to Bandai, that we do not understand, they can start producing material in the rule set and whatnot that caters to making it absolutely clear, fair and level on the playing field for all the countries that's involved. And other nations that are not English speaking would also struggle even further, that they can't tap into the English speaking resources and the Japanese speaking resources. That would be the most frustrating and isolating for them that I can absolutely imagine. Now, I've made an entry. I've entered in 2017. I did the mass production Q Ballet. I based it off my experience in 2016, 2015. My entries involved purchasing a 3D printer. I fabricated, designed, drew up and modified parts that incorporated into a Gundam kit and a diorama and told a story. Not only that was acceptable and was judged and looked fondly and well, that I was invited to do a talk and demonstration on 3D printing and how other people can incorporate it in their Gunpla Builders World Cup entry for 2016-2017. Bandai at some point had a change of mind. 2017, it's to be banned for the Asian countries. America, us, was stated as being A-OK. So it's sort of like, okay, later on when I found that out, this is the last hurrah. 1 month out, no, sorry, bad luck. As I post my stuff quite publicly, declared it as fact that this is what's happened, and I'm assumed to be disqualified. That was a bit of an investigation. All that was informed to me that there was just no communication, nothing could be done. And the day of the event, when some things went wrong, I swapped my spot for my entry for a friend who couldn't even enter because his entry details were lost. So I pulled out, and that was unfortunate, but I at least wanted to put the information out that there are these broken elements to the competition that people need to be aware of and prepare for all the hard work they put in their model, that once they rock up to the competition they also have a fair chance of having their model looked at, judged fairly, and have a chance at winning. Many of the models that get disqualified there is no feedback given to the modeler, that their model didn't even get a look unless they ask for the feedback saying, did I get judged, did I do well, did I not do well, to be told that you've done this one thing, and because of this one thing we won't even look at your model. And that's where it gets important to study the rules of what they make clear that's acceptable and absolutely not acceptable, and this changes frequently. The earlier set of rules, no resin whatsoever. Later on you're allowed to resin cast Bandai parts that you bought from a kit to have multiple of the same hands or weapons, but you still can't incorporate a third-party resin kit or anything else. And that is just so shaky and so scary to me that yes, some sort of duplication is allowed, but that form of duplication is not allowed, and that changing at a drop of a hat, you're probably best just not duplicating whatsoever, and just risk of just not getting a look in at all after all the work you've put in. So this led me to being disqualified, to what led me to believe was perfectly okay, being personally invited by the people running the event to talk about 3D printing and share about 3D printing, and to turn around and go, this is completely unacceptable. And one of my biggest fears that would have fallen back on me was that I said that this is within the rules, it's perfectly fine, it's how I done it, I'm doing it next year, other people copy, follow suit, and they suffer the same thing. It was very lucky, known to me, no one else picked up 3D printing and utilised it in the Gunpla Builders World Cup, but it is absolutely clear now not to do it. I have made 2 videos this year in discussion of the Gunpla Builders World Cup. One was titled Gunpla Builders World Cup 2017 Discussion. We pulled up the criteria, we pulled up the rules, and with all of my past experience, knowledge, talking to winners, talking to the judges, outlined what you need to look at when you're entering and considering in the design of your model, not to get an instant disqualification and get the chance for your model to be looked at. Just pointed out for beginners to consider when they're entering in their first competition. 1 week from then, and at that point I discovered the 3D printing element, and I made a mistake. I said obviously that they were looking at things that were downloaded and produced in a way of a third-party mass-produced thing, but in the end they were just talking about if you design or if you're borrowing design by someone else off the internet. The second video was Gunpla Builders World Cup judging criteria, how to win, looking at the rules, disqualifications, examples from previous winners, and any information I could gather that was not covered in the first video. So going into this, and even though you may have or may not have watched the 2 videos, what is the Gunpla Builders World Cup, without going into the silly, absolute, obvious elements. It is a branded competition. The rules have been absolutely fabricated according to the community in the Japanese and modelling scene by experienced individuals in the company Bandai that produces the Gundam branded model kits based off the materials such as the anime, manga, all that sort of thing. Other competitions that are comparable to the Gunpla Builders World Cup, such as the Tamiya competition, Orizaku, which is a single base model that has a very unique group build element using a single model opposed to an open-ended competition. The All Japan hobby competition, which is more a sanctioned event, such as the IPMS with an agreed upon rule set. The Golden Demon, a mirror copy of the Gunpla Builders World Cup, where a brand is promoting themselves through collecting works of the best modelers who happen to be their customers and contributing to the community. And finally the IPMS, which is a collection of modelers and hobby clubs throughout the English-speaking world and other countries, getting a universal set idea and expectation of competitions and running sanctioned events off that through elements of technical builds. The reference of the real thing that the model's being built off, and its idea, concept and ability to tell a story. Now, a lot of this sort of stuff is furtherly expanded upon the two videos I did discussing the Gunpla Builders World Cup, as well as analysing the IPMS. Watching the IPMS video will give you a very good understanding of what exactly is the mechanics and understanding of a scale model competition, the judging process and all that, analysing the IPMS handbook. Now, you enter this competition, people have many ideas, but the general idea is to get a collection of modelers and models on the day, and they compete each other for titles, status, that sort of thing. You're being compared to a certain standard of finish, how well it's built, how well it's painted. Your points are deducted by how many mistakes that are in the actual build process, and how realistic the model is based off the source material. If it's a tank, the real tank from the conflict. If it's a Gundam, what appears on the box art, comic, video game, or the anime. Though sometimes things can go into the imaginary world, and you create something that's very artistic, based off your own ideas, and that starts going into more of an arts element, but gets drawn back to, would your idea fit in the scheme of the source material? Some of the reasons why people do enter these competitions would to either socialise or pit themselves against peers, and see how they go according to all the different type and styles of modelers, being competitive individuals, people who paint, build for attention, such as through social media, YouTube channels or whatnot, and share it with a larger audience, and people who build, paint and share as a means of income and selling their works. And then you got all your other people who are very new, who are collectors, or who do it as just a pastime to waste time or rehabilitate themselves. So you've got a whole body of people with different reasonings. You display their work all together, they socialise, they meet up, and the end goal that draws everyone together is to pick, based off a set of rules, based off the source material, what is the best story told, what is the most idealistic representation of the source material through technical building. So that's the idea, and people that may benefit or reap the rewards of doing very well in these competitions is getting status or titles that may further their ideas if they paint and model for profit and sell their work. Someone who is a multi-champion or does very well or ranked in a competition would be more sought after to sell work of being of a very high quality. Those who create content, people will come and watch their tutorials, their builds, their work, because they're a known winner or champion, or just simpler for the other people who do it as a part-time hobby or a group. Simple brag rights or getting your model out to achieve attention and validation. Now, a bit of an analysis within the communities. We're going back to the communities and what is idealistic in an unsanctioned competition, and what is ideal as a good representation of the source material from community to community. Anime is very abstract. We've got the cartoons from the 70s, which is very imperfect. It's cheaply made, it's hand animated. There's some things that are memed and joked about of how bad the 1970s Mobile Suit Gundam can be, and certain cells being distorted and crappy looking. We've got the more recent anime that's CG, very slick, very beautiful, comes out in 3D, 4D, whatever, high graphics. You got video games, artwork, comics that are idealistically drawn and shaded and sold in stylized manner. You've got toys that are made, just a whole plethora of things, and you can either imagine if you're set in the actual Gundam universe, franchise, whatever, or if you're watching it from the TV screen inwards and as a 2D cartoon occurring. The facts are Gundams are not real, so we've got no real example to draw from, except for some who study weapons of wars or shiny cars or other things and apply that in their hobby. People looking at the world of wargaming, or they're just trying to base off what they visually see off the screen. So what's idealistically showing of what's a Gundam. The major #1 goal in scale modelling is doing a faithful replica as if it was real, or as it is real, and just cutting a small section out of time and space and presenting it as a piece of artwork. And every modeler, every individual person and collective of people have an idea of how it's done very, very well, and if it's entertaining or conveys that story or message. And in a competition, you get a collection of people who share an idea, or at least a bunch of people are selected to be a representative of that idea, and choose a model that fits that to a T. When you build a model, you make mistakes, and if that mistake breaks the immersion of its being a real piece, it is not doing very well. And that the idea is to create an illusion. Now, what is in Japan, they've got one idea. They like to imagine space, as Kawaguchi said, and little debris hitting and chipping things and whatnot. Other elements would look at the more Western approach would be, that's what it exactly looked like in the anime, that's exactly what it looks on the box art, and we're just going to perfect that perfectly, and it's just going to be a mirror copy, and that would go very well in IPMS competition. You would place well. Put that in the Gunpla Builders World Cup, they will say, yes, but wouldn't there be a little bit of dirt around the feet? Wouldn't there be chipping of paint around the corners and whatnot flying through space? These top modelers do it this way, and in a hive mind sense, many of us should emulate that. And this is where every community has an idea. Then you go into some other regional communities, you talk to Justin and whatnot, and their idea is they like to go a little more creative, and they'll go, this is my interpretation of a Gundam, that's that guy's interpretation of a Gundam, that's that guy's interpretation of a Gundam, which one is the most well built? Japan, it's a case of if it was real, by these elements of physics and imagination, what was real. IPMS, does it look like the box art? We are not told out of those what the judges are looking for, and that is the breakup of the community from which country, which club, which region, which set of rules. Now, the beautiful thing about the IPMS is it's all written well in the handbook and the set of rules. As we talked about the Gunpla Builders World Cup rules, it's a mess on a website that's just not understandable, unless in the Japanese version, for someone who's ethnically Japanese that can read the rules and have an understanding and access to people, they have access to a different set of information, or it's just as confusing for them. Who knows? One of the biggest misconceptions is that we should not have a sanctioned set of rules. We should not have judges that make decisions off their personal belief or a small community belief or a greater community belief. We should trust all the peers. We should trust the entire community, people that watch the anime, people that appreciate models, people that are active modelers. And that we should get all the models, line them up at the event, hold a vote, and the model for most votes represent that competition, and get everyone to vote worldwide or on social media, whatnot, and that's the winner of the Gunpla Builders World Cup. The IPMS does cover this, and there are problems with the popular vote, and that is mostly populism and popularity and herd mentality. When you get a large pool of people, they're going to automatically go through their gut or what they like and choose what's immediately pandering and ideal to them. They have no concept of what it means to build a model, why they're building the model, or everyone has a different idea of that, and it's just going on to other elements that's just absolutely not relevant to model building whatsoever. The two biggest problems I see immediately is one is populism. There are modelers, as I mentioned before, that build to get attention, and they're building a social media, a business, a Facebook page or a YouTube channel, and they would have many followers, and there is a select few at the top of the community in that aspect of modeling that's got the largest audience. And if you're going into a complete popularity competition, they would obviously have the advantage regardless of their skill, and they can deploy their audience to vote for them. If they choose not to deploy their audience, most likely they will be biased towards the winning of their kit. So anyone that has no presence online, they do not post anything, they do not share their work, there's just absolutely no hope. When we go into herd mentality, what model takes the lead immediately in an open poll? People want to support the winning side. When there's a football competition such as the Soccer World Cup, when the country that you're siding with is where you may be born or residing in doesn't win, you jump on another local country or another side, and you keep jumping teams until it's the grand final, and you've got the half the world on one side and the other half the world on the other side. And people want to support the winner. This gives them a chance to feel good, feel validated, celebrate. So if there is a model that is pretty well popular, looks good, and it's doing very well in the polls, people will just dogpile on that absolutely blindly. They may not even look at the models. And the thirdly would be memes. And there's been a few cases in the Gunpla Builders World Cup and other competitions. A good example is the RX-78 with the giant cod piece reaching to the stars. And the cod piece, or that single component of the Gundam, was bigger than the whole Gundam itself. And it was a very funny joke of cod piece. It looks like the crutch, it looks like a giant philic symbol going up, sexualized and whatnot. It was hilarious. People had a good laugh, and it invoked emotion. And elements to modelling evoking emotion and communicating idea is pretty good. It was a low common denominator, and people registered with it immediately. They found it funny immediately, and there's a chance that it would have won due to lowbrow humour. And people that have done an amazing method of telling a story, a diorama, or just an absolute skillful and well executed build would not get a C in, because to people that are not as passionate or into or have a love of modelling or appreciating a story being told or a technical build, it's just absolutely lost. And then it's just going to be a scramble and a meme or joke competition who could build the funniest looking toy or the grossest toy, which, you know, I reckon if that was a separate competition, and I think Tenga Egg did something like that where you incorporate Gunpla and sex toys together, that's really cool. Go ahead, do that. I'm completely down for that. but not having an actual sanctioned event or an event among peers that's going through the common goal of modelling would be a huge disappointment, and would not benefit the community. Why not both? So a popular vote, you can have it a competition as a side prize, award, whatnot, ticket card put in and go, this is the winner, these are what placed, and this is what got the popular vote, this is the people that walk through the door really like. It is valid, and sometimes the winning model can also win the popular vote, and that's pretty awesome, and that means that it's just a hats off, absolute amazing model, that it's understood by all elements of the competition. But a lot of the time that's not a shared idea, and this is where things start to scatter. Now the best evidence of this, 2017, I had a look at the backlash, I looked at the posts, I looked at the picture. The winner of this year, just at a very quick glance, sorry my camera, seems to be an iron-blooded orphan Gundam project, and there's many layers of armor, and it's all clustered together in a very fluid action pose on a dusty diorama. It does not gel with everyone. It was not popular with the popular vote. People looked at it, they did not like it immediately, and they demanded to know why another model that was visually appealing to them did not place or win. From my understanding in the video, Gunpla Builders World Cup judging criteria, how to win, from my understanding of rule sets and whatnot not being there, it was a very fluid movement. The model almost looked alive, and it was in a state of movement. It was performing an action to do something, and if you blinked for a second you'd swore it was actually doing whatever it was meant to do in the story being told. That story was told by the design, the bulk, the diorama, and the dirt build-up gave you an idea of the terrain or the world the Gundam was standing in. It was very well and clean built, and it just ticked all the right boxes what the judges were looking for, and that fulfilled their requirements in their combined decided set of rules and the criteria of what is a faithful description of source material translated into a model. People are confusing what they like, what other people like, and what a cluster of people like over a representation of source, and this led to surprise. It led to immediate anger. I'm not going to pass judgment on the model. I was not in Japan. I did not get to see the model. I did not get to see the other models, and again, as mentioned, as my biggest issue with the competition, I do not have an understanding of the criteria, and I'll admit that, and that the rules are just that confusing. Can't be sure. So it just didn't work out. People did not enjoy the model, and there was just immediate backlash. A lot of community heads, which I'm very happy that people came out and said, do not insult the model, you weren't there, you don't know the process, you don't know what's going on, support the modeler or get the fuck off, pretty much. And that all works out. But that is a good example of why you can't have the popular vote deciding who wins the competition. That kit would not even had a look in, regardless of how well and talented it was built. And some of the other options that I listed off might possibly could have been. Now, next thing I want to talk about is another misconception: the judges are not trained. They need to be swapped out. So you swap the judges out with the community. Questions: if you remove judges completely, no judges, the judges were not valid, they're not trained, They did not do the community justice. How does the community, through a poll, decide that a model's been plagiarized, if there's been cheating, if some of the rules are being broken, such as bootleg parts being used in a model? If the people decide that that's acceptable and it doesn't work out for the brand, and the brand is got a process of selling models, building up identity and whatnot, and the people turn around and decide, no, a Bandai model shouldn't win, it should be a Dragon Momoko model, why should Bandai put the resources, money and promotion behind the event, period? The judges, even though they are there to choose the best model in the end, there's a lot more work in place of building the infrastructure. And even though the infrastructure, the set of the rules and information, I believe is not very good, the event is constantly changing, it's evolving, there's a process of giving feedback, they will improve upon that. And a modeler who's entering the competition requests feedback, receives that and improves the model. It's a two-way street. The modeler is judging how well of an event, and if they choose to return to build, and if people are going to come, consume and look at the work, they give that feedback. The judges give the feedback, what you need to do better to have a better chance at winning. It's a two-way street. The judges, the competition, Bandai is not in 100% control. We have a choice to consume this event or not. If it doesn't work out, there's a boycott. And there is a process of a boycott that's going to be in place, but and maybe for reasons that's not in the model's control, it's not the model's cup of tea, they shouldn't be doing model competitions, period, or that it's misjudged and not put in the right thing. So judges are absolutely vital. They don't have as much control as we believe, but at the same time they have control in a way that does make the event either fair, fun, or unfair and skewed in a way that favoritism is being given out or not. Gunpla Builders World Cup, as far as I know from the top end, don't do that. They've got their criteria. They follow that to a T. Now, we combined the popular vote with judging. You make it 50-50. The judges are trained, they know what they're looking for, they're covering the criteria. They've got 50% of the vote of the point system for each kit, and then you've got 50% that's the public vote. The point system is just going to be that broken that the judges choose out a certain amount of models, the public view will choose a certain amount of models, and then you make them all meet together. That's an absolute mess, and half of it will be rewarded to popularity and memes and whatnot. Half of it would be going towards what's conveying a good idea, and it's technically very well built. If you happen to be a very popular modeler and you've got a decent amount of skill, that's a recipe for you to have that disadvantage, and it leans back to being unfair as the popular modeler, or the one with the biggest social media influence, or professional or whatnot, or been around the longest, would have the overwhelming advantage. Sort of a lot like those play to win games on mobile platforms and whatnot. Some people enter to play the game and they play for free, they put no money or resources, and people who drop a certain amount of money and they're given resources and weapons and whatnot to play the game, and they're automatically or have the ability to win and not put any skill in the game or effort whatsoever, and is validated and rewarded. For the rest of the player base that are playing for free, do not have fun, they leave the platform, and that leaves the people who pay to win by themselves. The audience is a lot smaller. The competition who's investing in promoting the Bandai event is not getting the attention they desire through entries and people consuming, viewing, watching, visiting. It does not work out for either the parties involved. After rambling about that for a very, very long time, another one from some of the videos comparing the Gunpla Builders World Cup and the IPMS. that the IPMS style of rules, judging, itemized sets is completely irrelevant and should not be incorporated in Gunpla, as there's a misconception that IPMS is about the river counting and the reference. The reference is the absolute most important element, and that's what gives people a leg up to win IPMS events. This is absolutely not the case, and in my video it's shown that the overall point breakdown is on the technical build elements, and different type of models have a different type of point breakdown. A wargaming figure would be mostly skewed on how well it's painted and based, and that the building element, where most of the time they're just a one model with a little bit of flash or one or two bits glued, is not a huge factor in points. So the best painted model wins in a wargaming aspect. A scale model aspect, where you're building, cementing, gluing together, and then your painting and your basing, would have a equal set of rules of construction, paint, the diorama or finishing aspects, as well as the idea. So you've got 4 sections, not 3 sections, such as the Gunpla Builders World Cup. Doesn't matter if you've got 4 sections or 3 sections to deduct rules from. The IPMS makes absolutely very clear what is being looked at and what is being considered. That's what makes an IPMS sanctioned event. And even though there is precedent to reference material that you apply, this is what I'm building, this is what it looks like, how it's going to be finished, and they get a judge who is very, very experienced at model building and has the idea of what a paint defect looks like, what a build defect looks like, and what's realistic and what's not. But they won't exactly have a tank expert judging the tank category, as they would be unfair in their understanding of the subject and putting their expectation of the source material on it. Now, a Gundam competition, we have Gundam experts, and the Gundam experts have their idea, they're putting it on it. But they're not outlining, as how the IPMS outlines, what they're exactly looking at. What I think we could do is, it should be more IPMS. Not exactly like the reputation or that the US and the UK have of river counting, elitism and whatnot. It is a rumour. I do not know if it's true or not. I've had limited dealings and run-ins, and I cannot confirm that. I could say that the Australian system is as balanced as it can get, and that they implement that. What you could do for the criteria for Gundam is you can make it purely technical. What's the best technical build, and only judge finish, build, paintwork. And then people can be as creative as they want and as cool looking as they want, and the only aspects, and that's important, is the build. This is the outlet with a mix of creativity of the Orozaku Championships. How that competition works is everyone is given a model. It is the Zaku from Mobile Suit Gundam. You could choose a high grade, you could choose a master grade, you could choose whatever you want. Or sometimes they go, this is the exact model kit you have, go as crazy and creative as you want. And how complex of a job they do and how technically well it's executed is what's put up on a pedestal as the best kit, where they've got rad sculpting and they're transferring this model into something completely different that builds a universe, an idea, an aesthetic, and a story told around it. And they judge it on how well it's executed, the cool factor, and then you've got ranked models. So you could go in that direction and go into a technical thing with a cool authentic level, or you can go Gunpla Builders World Cup, or you can go IPMS and go, here's the set of rules and points that are on the technical elements, here is the elements for the criteria of the source material, and here is the itemized list that that works out. You've got the rules, what's required to enter, what time to rock up, the size, the models that are allowed to be used and where you've sourced those models from, Then you go into build, paint, finish. We want it to be from the Gundam universe, from one of the anime, manga, whatever, and it's recognizable as so, or you just make it open-ended, as creative as you want. You can paint a RX-78 to look like a bear, or just go abstract, artsy. It needs to be one path or the other path, and not just let people to go out and do whatever they want and then punish them absolutely later. Should Bandai copy the IPMS set wholesale? No, I don't think so. They've got an agenda. They're promoting their brand. They're also promoting the Gundam source material and franchise to consume anime, manga, all that sort of thing. They could just make it clearer, and that would sort everything out. IPMS is amazing reference material. They've been doing it for such a long, ridiculous amount of time throughout the whole history of the hobby, and it's so well documented, it's so well written, it can be drawn as inspiration, and as it is a chapter-based thing that they're trying to influence as much of the world as possible in their style, I don't think there'll be any criticism or complaint of borrowing elements. Many independent competitions either completely plagiarise or heavily engineer a rule set from their base ideas and expectation of what makes a good model. And the system's not perfect, but it's been developed from day one to today in a way that it represents where the hobby industry is at the moment, and there's always a level of improvement from when I entered it as a kid, and you had all sorts of politics going on, and how much fun there is to be had by entering it now. So it's just the idea in the end of communicating what the judges are looking for, what's inside the judge's head, and putting it in the modeler's head. And once everyone's on the same page, it just works absolutely perfectly. And that's what the IPMS have done. It's absolutely volunteer based. The judges are the modelers, the people who run the committee are the modelers, the people who come to look at the models are modelers, the people who enter are modelers. And not all the modelers may not be on the same level or have the same idea in their head, but at least it's well documented in a way that if you want that information, it's there and you can grasp it. As long as the information is gathered, it's accessible, it's in a place that can be consumed for the correct audience that's there. And the rules in Japan should be made very clear in Japanese. The rules in the English-speaking countries need to be very, very clear, and the same in the Philippines, the same in France, everywhere that it's going, Italy included. So going into why is the result a shock? And again, it's the whole circular logic. We don't know what the judges are looking for. And if the judges, if it's made more clear what the judges are looking for, a lot less people will not complain. And if the judges put the results out and a written report card, we liked it because it had a flow of information, a flow of movement. It looked like it was telling a story. It had a nice colour palette. If there's just something small out there like that, people could have an understanding, because even though a picture can tell 1,000 words, there's only a certain amount of information we can get from a photo taken that's from one angle and showing a model. And one of the criteria that I did talk about in one of the rule sets is that Bandai is looking for a model that they can go one angle, take a photo, put on a magazine cover, and it's just dynamic and impactful enough to be exciting for someone to pick up that magazine, to go out, buy a model kit, all that. The cool, authentic value. And people don't know that they have to build a cool model that looks good in one view. So we've got this kit that's won. Everyone's absolutely confused. People don't know about the criteria and what people's idea of a cool model is a different model. But that model, which may be very, very cool, it might have violated one or two rules, or it might not have been as strong in the judging criteria as that model is. And that's just where the cross of information of the community, the general consumers that snap Gundam, look at it, go, that's cool. To the people who scale model, to the people that are more involved, to the people who are judges and competitors in the competition. This has been mentioned in many of my videos, many other videos. The Gundam community is broken up in a way that's completely different to other modelling communities, which also have their problems. We're divided that Bandai is a toy company, Gunpla is a toy. You buy it, you assemble it. The play time is the assembly time. You've got a pre-coloured plastic toy that's articulated, posed, and it's no different to buying an action figure, except you're not assembling it. And then you've got a smaller pocket in that community that glue it together and weather it, paint it, modify it, and go a lot further. And even though the majority of the people who are the toy collectors, they're the people that may absorb, look at the source Gundam material, and they watch the anime, they read the manga, they're fans of it. They actually like the Gundam, what the Gundam has achieved and done in the story, and how it got there in the story, and the meaning behind it. The scale modelers, it's actually not unusual that a modeler will go, this is really cool, I'm going to build it and I'm going to inject my own ideas in it. And I have no understanding, following, or never seen any elements of the anime. And it's all about the technical build. They might watch a couple of the cartoons to get an idea to recreate the scene and just consume just enough for the world building element, but they just do not have the same strong intimate detail that a strong Gundam fan that consumes the anime, loves the anime, love the robot, love the design. They buy the models, they assemble it, it's pre-coloured, and they've got a representation of that model based off the source material in the moulded plastic. So it's the most primitive form it's there. Raw plastic, no panel lines, nubs sticking out, all that. But they're very happy with the representation that they have. The scale modeler goes further and makes corrections, build it and improve upon it to be closer to either their imagination or the source material that the cartoon is trying to convey to people in that storytelling. And what is ideal of the best way to tell that story is absolutely subjective. What's happened is the majority of the community is the people that consume the anime, and they snap the models together. They're elevated as the snappers. The model that won what tells a story to me is a scale modeler. I'm not exactly sure if they consume all the Gundam material or not, but they've built something that's their inside thinking and understanding of the Gundam world and how a Gundam should be, and portrayed it as a model, and that's his interpretation. The people that love the source material, that love Gundam, that love the cartoon, has looked at it and go, this does not conform with my understanding, my friend's understanding, and the greater community understanding of Gundam. I'm already rejecting it because it's not what I've fallen in love with, and what I would have loved would have been just as photorealistic and beautifully renditioned, but faithful to the source material and cartoon. And this is probably another reason why the popular vote is also not a good idea, that it would automatically disadvantage to people that are doing a point of view of the greater understanding of the source material, and not so much an idea of a creative outlet of your personal interpretation. But if that was made clear in the criteria, if the judges really like how people perceive Gundams, or that they only exclusively want the point of view from the anime exclusive, and it has to reference what exactly happened in the anime and how the anime foretells it and lays it out. Though the fact that the judges have chosen the model that they have has communicated to me that they love the insight of what that modeler sees Gundam and the story he wants to tell through that patch of diorama and the motion of that designed mech. Another criticism, the judges are inexperienced. They have absolutely no idea what they're doing, and they just need to be replaced with experienced judges. My understanding of Japan, what's happened for the World Cup and the final model that's chosen, I tried to look this up. This is based off older Hobby Japan magazine look-ins and previous competitions that I follow closely. This year I haven't followed it as closely. Those reasons will be given out in the vlog and other things that's going on in my life. Generally you have a panel of either 4 or 5 judges. I can't quite remember. I'm pretty sure it's 5 judges. The most important thing is the first 4 judges. We've got the chief judge, and final decisions are made by the chief, Mr. Kawaguchi of Bandai. He is responsible for the marketing of Gunpla and all that elements. He designs the competition via committee of the peers that are under him, and he has an idea of what's going on. So he's not the sole person that's choosing, and it's not purely coming from his point of view. He has selected a panel of his peers, people that are pretty much his equal or greater, and they come from media sources in the scale modelling world of updated magazines. That would be Model Graphic, Hobby Japan, Dengeki Hobby when that was a magazine spread. I know one of them is Max Watanabe. He is a very, very, very famous modeler, very, very talented. He's got a very particular way of visualizing, communicating, building, finishing and painting models. Thoroughly enjoy his style. If you do not know who he is, throw that into Google right now and have a look. Absolutely talented modeler. He is on the same level and intimately involved in the hobby with Mr. Kawaguchi. We've got the other 2 judges. I'm not sure if they're the same people or if they mix around. They would be equally known modelers. These modelers are always having their work displayed on public media, magazines, competitions, events, releases and whatnot. So they're thrusted upon the Japanese modelling community, and the Japanese modelers are aware of who they are, what their models are, and talking to a couple of people from Japan, they are deified to the point of they're spoken of and respected in person as if they were of royalty, politics, or even such as like a god. So from that community point of view, there is no complaints. What happens is taken as gospel, and people try to emulate that. Their fame is not as well conveyed in the West. Everyone knows about Mr. Kawaguchi, but Max Watanabe and the other magazine modelers are just not known whatsoever. And when a model is chosen, it's a complete random. It's absolutely completely random and not exactly understood by the people that are viewing it, watching it, involved, entering, and that sort of thing. There's one complaint made, I think, by a child of Mecca that there is a final judge, a guest judge, and that this year was done by the mech designer of Iron-Blooded Orphans, and he believed that he was not a scale modeler. I haven't looked into that. I don't know what his relationship is with modelling, but since a lot of the criteria is in conveying an idea following the source material, he is the expert of what is the source material as he created, or one of the creators of the source, and that particular season anime popularity and whatnot. And what is favoured in the Gunpla Builders World Cup is what's new, what's fresh, what's popular, what's of the latest releases. And that's an Iron-Blooded Orphan kit being chosen is very good. It's not solid 100% evidence, but it's good evidence that they like to choose something that's a lot more recent, very well known, very popular in Japan by the Japanese consumer, opposed to something that's older and might be an obscure favourite of that particular model, but not of the greater community. and he was there representing that element, that set of the rules and whatnot, and that the scorecard was skewed completely differently from his understanding to the expert judges. And as there is an odd number of individuals that's involved, and the designer of the competition has threw their element in, it has a representation and impact of the World Cup level, the final winners to the world champion, but that does not affect the regional ones. And one of the biggest issues with the regional one, the Australian heat, the American heat, the Italian heat and all that, the people that are at the competition can ask and see and whatnot who are the judges, but I think it should be made known how many judges, who are the judges. Sometimes there's a number of them, and there was a few guest judges for a few years in Australia, and this year there was a few problems, and it was believed or rumoured that there was a single judge, Mr. Kawaguchi, and that there wasn't any chance of bouncing off between multiple people through multiple trained perspectives of choosing a place model. And there was a few complaints regarding that. This is where it falls into my complaint of due to how things are vague, it falls onto personal I'm just absolutely falling apart. Perception or belief. And if you've got multiple people, they can argue, debate, and go, yeah, I subscribe to that, or no, I don't subscribe to that. If you've got someone by himself, it could be as lazy as going 1, 2, 3. And some models can have a look in, some models may not even have a look in whatsoever to save time. And that activity, they were saving time. And this bit of information is just unknown for every country. And if you look at the time that's spent in judging, opposed to the time that's spent in investing and building the models and all that, it can appear to be very, very unfair. And I think as an absolute minimum, and this is going into an opinion, not fact, like the Japan heat and like for the World Cup heat, announcing who's the judges either before or even after the fact has an idea of these are the individuals that are involved. Are they known? Are they not known? Do they have models to view or not, to have an idea how they build, what they're looking for, what they like, what they don't like. That just helps a little bit. But yeah, that's also very not consistent, though. That could be consistent in the future, though it's definitely a complaint. Another misconception is judging is extremely easy. You choose the best model wins, and you have a look and you count down mistakes. When things get very competitive, communities grows and whatnot, and when you look at models side by side, and you've got something with as vague restrictions as the Gunpla Builders World Cup, that almost anything goes in the creative department. There is scattered rules, and once you're counting down the rules, once you're counting down points and looking at certain elements, some models just have one red flag, it's completely disqualified, doesn't get a look at. And other models are being compared to which one has the most mistakes, or doesn't follow the source, or is telling a story, or just looks very, very awkward, and it's well built but it's just not conveying any sort of message. Once you're analysing all of this without as a well set together paperwork and criteria as the IPMS, you need to be a really, really talented modeler that can analyse and look at models, pick up mistakes, look at the story, look at the what Bandai is looking for in a build, and everything else. You really do need to have the chief judge to do all the hard work, as none of the infrastructure is there whatsoever. And to choose something that's fair, that the people who enter I feel validated and very happy with, though I wouldn't pander too much to the rest of the audience that are just watching and taking interest in. The models, I know when I looked in the Australian heats and I was attending there was a good 7 to 9 models that were just so well done, and some of them just followed different ideas that were either weathered, told a story, had a whole diorama and other miniatures and just had a scene cut out, or just a really flawless, beautifully made, beautifully painted showroom car-like original design that was your Gundam, and you had extra bits added and panel scribed and whatnot. There was many different models, styles of models on display, but the story that they were telling and the execution of the technical build was beautiful. From a clean cut look, there was several models that could easily placed, and from the understanding of criteria and the understanding of rules, there was no way of saying this deserved the place, this deserved the place, this deserved the place, this did not deserve, this did not deserve. And that when you're looking at pictures and a very well photographed model from a good angle and another model that hasn't been photographed as well because it's in an awkward position in the cabinet or is a bad angle taken or something, what is seen in person and what is seen in the pictures, there's not as a well pictured story, and that is just so close. From my experience in judging, in competing in competitions, in hosting competitions, I would not be comfortable judging the Australian heat. It's I'm just not quite in that level in my journey in the hobby, and that someone who's got, you know, their 20, 30, 40 years of hobby under the belt, such as Mr. Kawaguchi, there's just an insight and something that he knows but is not sharing, that he's able to pick out what model it is, as well as the criteria and the rule sets are set out by Bandai and the Gunpla Builders World Cup. So I think for people to make decisions who are even less experienced in competitions, to go out and go, this kit looked amazing, this kit didn't look as amazing, why is that first, why is that second, why is that third, is not absolutely understandable to me. It is very insulting to the people who enter the competitions and model and whatnot, and there's one particular case that I've heard many criticisms of Josh Dara. Good mate, love the guy, and the model he built was technically very, very well made. Fantastic, and it didn't place. I'm not really surprised about that. I'm not really angry, or I've actually got absolutely no opinion about that. But with just how much the mess of the criteria of what they're looking for of the judging results, even though the fact he spent 2 years into it, and even the fact there's just so much detail and thought packed into it, and the mechanical storytelling he put behind it, there was obviously red flags and elements that the judges looked at it and said this is the level it's at, and these are the levels of models we're putting into. It's not a clear case cut of which model is technically the best. There is that element of idea or creativity, a criteria that makes up 33% of the points, and we have no idea what they're looking for that 33% of the points. And maybe Josh has done something that just lost that many points, that he wasn't in the league to place. And I know for a fact that Mr. Kawaguchi judged the Australian heat, and that was what was thrusted forward and set upon. I don't really have any complaint about that, but I think it's very unfair to the 3 models that did place, and the other 3 or 4 models that was equally good and was just a fraction of a hair close to also placing themselves, goes to Xeon, some of the other guys, to have them completely set aside because Josh has a lot of friends and is extremely popular in certain circles, that other people that are completely unknown they're sort of seen of not quite deserving for place 1, place 2, place 3, and the people followed up. And I think that looking at a competition and saying that should have won, that should not have won, depending on how involved in the hobby you are and publicly thrown out there, it just rubs me up completely the wrong way. And you may have that discussion in private circles or away from prying ears or whatnot. But I think when these opinions are being posted on social media to be commented upon and upvoted and made in videos and whatnot, that's conveying to other people that that is a fact and not opinion, unless it's made absolutely clear-cut case that it's only an opinion and that it shouldn't have any impact. Other people mimic that exact sentiment, and that it's just believed that it's a model that should have won, but due to something that's very mysterious didn't win, either due to discrimination or the judges being incompetent. And this is where misinformation come from, and strange theories come from all over the place, and people just perpetuate, spread and share that rumour or fabrication to the point where the majority of the community believes that to be the fact and truth, and then they make their post or video going, this is my thoughts on it, and following these other people, this is what happened. And if you say something happened that didn't happen enough times among enough people, it's going to be written into history as being the case, where it wasn't the case. And for the very few people that were there, they're just completely written out of history, really, aren't they? Realistically, once we're looking at work that people spend up to weeks, up to months, a good part of the year, resources, time and whatnot, to design something. Now, the Gunpla Builders World Cup is not a free-for-all. There are restrictions, and then you dedicate time and whatnot, and you're pitting yourself against your peers, and you honestly believe where you're placing in that competition is who you are as a model among everyone else. And there's investments in that. And then you've got that minefield of rules. You've got that whole minefield of criteria, and that you're being given a place that may not be an accurate representation of how good of a modeler you are, or how far in the hobby you've gone, or what your goals, aspirations, the type of modeler you are. And it honestly is an absolute minefield, and it goes back to the meaning of holding a title or being a modeler of a winner of a model and whatnot. I saw one comment where blah has won, no conversation can be had or made or debated, and that if you win the Gunpla Builders World Cup, you're the king of Gunpla, and no one can make any argument. You're just absolutely infallible, and criticisms is just absolutely banned. And I completely disagree with that. I am of the belief that when you share your model, you build a model, you share it. You shouldn't exactly insult the modeler for how good or bad it is, and rip them apart, because even though a model might be bad, effort and time has been invested in it. You don't know the story of the modeler. The modeler might be doing it to recover from grief or disease or something. They have handicaps or disadvantages. They might be from a third world country, they might be very poor, they might not have a resource, and there's always a reason of why a model's built, painted and finished in a way, if they're good, if they're not, if they're able-bodied, if they're not, if they're very young, if they're inexperienced, if they're very seasoned, if they're very experienced, if they have to overcome a lot. Someone recovering from cancer and having gimpy hands and putting a lot of effort into regaining control and the ability to build a model that may look really simple and nothing special to anyone else, but to that exact person they went through a huge journey just to get to that point. And this is where it's absolutely difficult, that when you're critiquing a model, you don't know how the model got there, why the model's there, and the process of building it, unless there's a deliberate and explicit work in progress and a statement made of the intention and the build process, which makes it more fascinating when someone does a work in progress and shows a finished model and the whole process behind it. You could sell 1 million of the exact same model kit, RX-78 Master Grade, whatever. Every person that has a go at that kit will be completely different. The people that just snap it together, some might have long nubs, short nubs, scratches and gorges, polished out, well cut, different tools, different tool markings. Though once you start getting into cleaning up, modifying, painting, finishing, dioramaing and whatnot, no two models are exactly the same. And even if someone tries to plagiarize, copy, or do a tribute, someone really likes how someone built a model in a particular way and tried to copy it, there will be noticeable difference. And even how they take the photo, how they display it, the materials and tools they have access to, no two models are exactly the same. And that's what really brings me to a competition, and to look at other models and to engage and then be completely involved in the community, and then probing forward, and who are they, how old, how young, where they're from, what resources they have, and all that sort of thing. And the most poetic thing of a competition is once you mix all that thing together, and the people's intentions, if they want to be better, if they're a professional modeler, if they have the social media, if they just do it to pass the time, if they're doing it because they're just bored, or they love the anime, or they hate the anime, or whatever reason. And then you compete them together, you have a set of rules, you have a set of criteria, you see what pops up. But because you have so many reasonings, and what a competition, someone might win a competition, put the trophy on their shelf, quit the hobby 2 years later, it means absolutely nothing to them. Other people, it's a business decision. They're following a product, a brand, a business, selling models, or pushing your YouTube channel. And to other people, it's just a simple thing of bragging. But when you enter a competition, the winner, to a set of rules, who's best on the day. And maybe the world's best modeler is sick that day, he was in a car accident, he couldn't finish his model on time, he didn't meet the requirements. Because you won that competition, you're only the best on the day under those conditions. You're not periodly the best modeler. And that's just what has to be very, very clear. But once you're on the world stage, and Bandai is in the business of marketing and producing, you win the Gunpla Builders World Cup, photos are taken of your model, it's put on the magazine covers and whatnot, you're an element of promotion and not a built model. So when someone posts a model, we go back to the story, you post the model, you don't know how they got there, all that sort of thing, you wouldn't be inclined to insult or harshly criticize the model, because you don't know how they got there. But when you're on top of the heap, and then Bandai takes the image rights of your model and plaster it all over posters and magazine covers and whatnot, at that point, it's a marketing thing. And the criticism is completely different. It's going to happen in shop fronts, it's going to happen on the street, it's going to happen in private conversation and whatnot. And there's just no control over it. It's absolute, it's just absolutely out there. It's a free-for-all. So when you're entering in competitions, there is a common understanding that you're putting yourself in the public light, and people are going to have all sorts of opinions, and they're going to thrust that forward in polite conversation, in the open, or in absolute private. And it is as it is. You can't have the special snowflake stance or protection. It's a risk you make when you put your model in the public sphere and you put it into a competition. And the fact that if someone likes a style or doesn't like a style, one thing when you put a model out and people look at it and they comment and go, it's not my cup of tea, that's an opinion that means absolutely nothing. And who cares if someone likes something or doesn't like something? It's once you start being critical and you're critically analysing it, that's when the feedback is either really, really good and positive or really, really poor. So we go to the popular vote. We've got the 2017 winner. A lot of people do not like it. It's not their cup of tea. It's not popular with them. That information means absolutely nothing. It's completely and utterly irrelevant. And what we're looking at is people who are critically analysing the model. And that's what the judges do. And I'm not really seeing that anywhere else. And when I'm sitting back and I'm seeing the whole flow of social media information and videos and whatnot, it's just a lot of empty content that's almost not interesting, except for the number of people doing it and doing it in mass. Almost like there's a hive mind situation going, that one person says it and a ton of other people are just mimicking it. Sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not the case, and that goes back to the snappers who consume the anime and the people who are the scale modelers, and they're more so for the process. A lot of these comments made on competitions, on judging, on rules, all this sort of thing. A lot of people really need to know their limits when they're making a comment or they're spreading a common thought, misconception, or repeated word. Find out the source of that opinion or of that fact or information. If not, have a look into other people that are saying it. Analyze your understanding of competitions, involvement. Analyze what other people's criticism of understanding of competitions and involvement. I think the biggest thing is just start an open dialogue and conversation. Ask. Instead of saying, blah model shouldn't have won, the rules are rigged, the judges are very, very poor. Maybe it's better to ask a question of, this model won, I do not have an understanding, I don't like the fact that I don't have the understanding, or it is not of an opinion that this model looks like it's something that would have won. Why is it the fact? What elements of it would make it a winning model? And that is an amazing conversation. If someone said, this won, why didn't it win? Why did it win? What is the elements of it winning? And then you start having a cascading conversation on, is it the base? Is it how it's moved, the color palette, the build, whatnot? Instead of going straight into deconstructing it and analysing the faults, looking into what is the good points. What made it so there wasn't points deducted or any mistakes applied to it, because you'd think of something at the top of the competition would have the least amount of faults and the most fateful ways of telling a story and drawing from the source material that the judges really, really understand and really enjoyed. And if that you have a different understanding of source material and whatnot, project that out and ask what other people's understanding of that breakdown of the rules, of the criteria and all that is. I think that would be very, very handy for the community to have that discussion and to talk about it and to expand their understanding, promote the expanding of that understanding, and also communicating feedback back to the event organisers, back to Bandai, that in the end this is our understanding, and they could turn around and go, oh shit, I don't have a fucking clue, we need to fix this. Now there is also a trend I've noticed in some of the American modelers and other people. As soon as the term started throwing around that this competition, or the people have realised this competition is more about the promotion of the product and not so much about the technical build of the model, or being a very clear, sanctioned criteria of what the judges are looking for from the source material, or their understanding or creative aspects of the build, that they intend to bow out or not enter, boycott the Gunpla Builders World Cup. A couple of people have said that they've burnt out. The fault is not on Bandai themselves, and they're just going to carry on their own thing. There's a lot of other people that are got a chip on their shoulder. They're very angry. They're upset at either Bandai, Gunpla Builders World Cup, whatnot. It may be salt. It may be understanding that they didn't place where they thought they would have placed, that they've overestimated their own work or underestimated the competition, that they didn't do the simple activity of feedback from the competition and the judges, that asking probably would have got them the information of where they got deducted for points, and this would have built upon their understanding of the criteria and what the judges are looking for. And once you have a better understanding of what the judges are looking for, you can see that does that sit with the time you invest in building the model, and that would you enjoy spending that much time, putting that much effort and resources to build a model to compete in a scene that is not exactly your cup of tea or within your style or not. And it goes into an end of just you've spent the time, you've been there. Asking is just probably one of the most important aspects in the validation and the ending process for finishing the model, bringing it to competition, then removing it and going home to pack it away and go to the next thing. The feedback is just such an important element. And then comparing your feedback notes with other modelers and building up a bigger idea and whatnot. We're a community, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we've got the comment sections, we're all here talking, and there's conversations happening, and there's a lot of backwards and forwards and memes and whatnot, but I don't think we're having the right conversations in comparing notes. And I don't know, because it's not interesting for most people, or it's not being pushed to the front page or the top of the conversation of the group, or the majority of the group are focusing on the next master grade release or the next meme or something, and it's being buried. But probably it should be a conversation, or at least a Facebook group created to talk about competition tips, and where things are going right and where things are not quite going wrong, without judging and going down the elitist river counting phase of excluding some, including others, and just hating on each other, and not exactly coming together and comparing notes. So what I'm going to say is there are a good chance for next year I'm not going to enter the Gunpla Builders World Cup. My reasoning for it is that I've had a sour experience this year. That was a fault of Bandai Gunpla Builders World Cup. For next year, as I've shown to have a very, very good understanding, I'm not exactly inspired, but more importantly, I've got some personal affairs that I'm dealing with that needs attention before modelling. And I think I want to spend a little time I do have on the channel on doing smaller projects than the one big project. So I'm going to bow out for a year, but it's not exactly, I'm going to say that it's the fault of the competition, or that the competition is unfair, or the judging is rigged, or the judges are inexperienced, or the rules are bad. It's purely my fault. And I think a lot of people who are saying that they're boycotting probably should be a bit more honest with their reasoning, or at least honest with themselves if they believe that they did deserve to win or not win. It's a case of understanding and communicating, and the best communication is sourcing that feedback. If you do not enter the competition, this is the absolute harshest reality. When people come to a competition, it's an introvert thing. It's about them. You enter a model, you see people looking at your model, you're trying to win, you're trying to get attention. It's a competition of who can get the most attention, who can win whose model's going to stand out the most, and everyone's there for their own personal reason. And then they look at the other models because they really enjoy it, and they've got friends there, and they pay attention to their friend's model for validation, and it's a fun process. But people are there as an attention-seeking activity, and other people go there to see what's there and what attracts their attention. You not entering, you're going to be forgotten very quickly, and with no work in progress, no model, there'll be absolutely no one noticing you, even if you are a very big modeler or very famous or something. You may have a few good friends or very close fans that will comment, but people who leave the hobby and not involved get forgotten very, very quickly. And you spend 1 year or one round or one Gunpla Builder World Cup not entering, you're absolutely immediately forgotten. And thinking that you're not attending and you're marching with your boots is going to get sympathy, that is not the right reason to boycott the event. The correct reason would be that you don't have the resources to do it, the time, or that it's not beneficial for what your goals are or the amount of enjoyment that you are getting out of it. And we all really have to be realistic with that, because the event is very prestigious, the prizes are absolutely amazing. Even if there is an understanding of what the criteria is and people turn around and go, ooh, I didn't sign up for this, I didn't like it, other people will invest the time and want to get and reap what rewards or expectations they're getting out of it by entering it for whatever reasons. For something as big as this competition is and how it's expandedly growing and rapidly getting bigger and bigger, it's just not really going to be the case of bringing attention to you not being there. Is this controversy new? Complaints about judges, complaints about rules, the model not being popular? No, this almost happens every single year. It's a bit more relevant to myself. I'm not ignoring it this time. I think every time we get these strange misconceptions spreading and whatnot, it's just more and more harmful to the community. And people just get the wrong idea and the wrong message of what competitions are about, what exactly happens in a competition. And that might scare people off, because I do notice that a lot of people won't enter a model competition because they're too scared. They don't believe that they're good enough, that they've got other ideas of exactly what a competition is until they enter. And when they're seeing that judges are inexperienced and the wrong models are winning and other things are happening, that could scare someone that's never entered something before silly, even if they're a really, really, really talented modeler. Because a good element of the hobby is the mental gymnastics, and being able to critique yourself and see where you fit in the grander scheme of things. And I've seen some people that are just absolutely mind-bendingly good, and they would categorize themselves as a beginner. And I've seen people that have been snapping kits for a very, very long time and see themselves at anything else other than where they're at, and doing all sorts of funny or silly things. So in the end, what my criticisms are of the competition is Bandai's communication with the people entering the competition. I think the rules and the criteria needs to be completely rewritten, and there needs to be some sort of attempt made that what Bandai expects, or what the Gunpla Builders World Cup expects out of an entry, is conveyed and well understood by the majority of the modelers, and who else is struggling can be helped out by the rest of the community, where at the moment the majority of the community are in the dark, if they're aware of it or not, due to how vague things are. My background in competitions are I've been entering the IPMS for a very, very long time, more than 10 years, and about 7 years with the Gunpla Builders World Cup. I've hosted a competition on YouTube about 5-6 years ago, and I've been running one for a largish event on behalf of the Bandai distributor in Australia, in Melbourne, at an event called Animasia. I've written up the rules. They look very much like an older set of Gunpla Builders World Cup rule set, but it's sanctioned in a way like an IPMS one. That's worded out in a way where there's the requirements and rules, what is required to be there and enter, the correct ticket to get into the event, bringing your model, how many models, the clear categories, how it's judged, what's the rules are divided up as the points being deducted, judge's decision being final, and that the goal of the judges, and the goal is made very, very clear as that being a very small competition, it would be very welcoming, inviting, intimate, and absolutely ideal due to the lack of attention for a beginner to have an attempt, try, get their feet wet, ask questions of everyone in the community as well as the three judges, and get the confidence up to go to a larger competition, either if they're going to the Gunpla Builders World Cup or they're going to the IPMS. And that was very, very clearly laid out, and I think that Bandai just needs to state that this is our goal. We're choosing the best model to represent us and to be the flagship of Gunpla. I think people would be really happy to get behind that. If you're told that you're going to be the flagship for 1 year, people definitely get behind that. I don't think you have to be shy or hiding the fact that they're going to be used as a tool by Bandai, because them being used as a promotional tool is very advantageous for whatever reason for the person who has been selected, and what they're looking for in that model, how the source material of Gundam's being used, and the restrictions of the rules laid out in a way that's very clear and easily understood by someone that's walked off the street, bought a Gundam, snapped it together for the first time, had a look at the rules and had an exact idea what's going on and how they fit in the whole grand scheme of things. And then this also well communicated to the other countries and heats, and that the rules are written, translated and put out in a way that the people of that community have a good understanding to enter for that community event. It's judged, who's judging it, how many judges, and then that feeding into the bigger and greater community. There's one thing that is very apparent, that Bandai is a company that conducts research, listens and rewards and gives back to the community. There is an element of whatever gets spread on social media and among the scale modelers does get feedback to Bandai, and they act upon it because it generates them sales, it gets them closer to who their consumer base is, as in entering and consuming the Gunpla Builders World Cup, as well as buying Gunpla and building it from the toy collector point of view and the scale modeler, and how it's most beneficial, efficient, cheap and profitable to them, which is obviously the most important line. So with Bandai listening, what can the community do? I think the most important thing is, if you're inclined to enter, regardless of the skill and whatnot. Ask lots of questions, get an understanding. Get yourself under the wing of someone who's got experience in enter, particularly someone that's won before. They would at least able to groom you and send you in the right direction, that your build is going to be accepted, looked at and judged. They'll have a very good understanding for that. Once you've entered, built, competed and have an understanding, and there is gripes, criticisms, or at least a lack of information or understanding on an expert of the community, ask questions. Something's not quite right, ask, build a dialogue. The person who's mentoring you, have them dissect what's going on with the rules, what's going on with the criteria, why blah model won, why blah model didn't, how did my model fare, where do I fit in the whole thing. And once you have an understanding of that, and if you've got a complaint, make the complaint very clear with your understanding. My complaint is very clear. I'm not happy with the rules. I think what's happened is unfair, and the criteria is just absolutely confusing. That is written in a very clear sentence. It can be posted on social media. A video can be made. And once enough of these voices come together, and if these voices are very similar, it conveys to Bandai. What Bandai is hearing right now is the judges are not qualified, that the first place Model 1 shouldn't have won, or it's not popular, or it's not liked, and that people are going to boycott and not enter. And I could understand from that message that they would understand is that the community is stupid and they don't know what the fuck they're going on about, and that that sort of feedback and other feedback is not valid because everybody else is on some sort of faraway planet in understanding and what's going on in the grander scheme, that it's not worth listening and acting upon for Bandai to improve the event, to improve the experience for everyone involved. And I can assure you what's most profitable and beneficial for Bandai is if everybody else is happy, and that the whole relationship is going smoother and having an understanding, building, designing a model, entering, they get a winning model, they thrust that as their poster boy kit. If Bandai is looking at all the criticism, getting confused themselves, going, well, no, the judges are not unqualified, and this is weird, and that is weird, they're not going to act on anything. And with all of this snowballing effect that's occurring in social media is just absolutely more so damaging and misinformation for the experience of everyone who enters, watches, enjoys the Gunpla Builders World Cup. It just needs to be a greater understanding of communication, that we have a look in, at least go on the website, look at the rules, enter and participate before providing feedback. And even asking the judges when you're at the competition, and you're allowed to, and there's appropriate times to do that. And if you can't ask the judge, you can ask the staff, or you can email them later, or you can even ask some of the other peers at the competition, former winners, all that sort of stuff. You ask someone to get a greater understanding. I do not like the winning kit. That absolutely does not help anyone. Bandai, as I said before, I take no... I don't take anything away from an opinion, that if you like something or you don't like something, you better believe that Bandai cares even less than I do. And I think that just wraps up absolutely everything. And that's just everything off my chest regarding the whole affair. What I've experienced, what's happened to me, what's happened to other people, the end of the event. I think, in conclusion, Gunpla Builders World Cup finished well. There was a lot, probably record number of people entering. A lot of the entries look good in every country. It's still a growing event. There is some regression. There's some elements that's going backwards. There's elements going forwards. It could only either stand still or improve. That's just the future to wait and see. I will eventually return to it. If I do enter it this year, I do. If I don't, I don't. That is purely my fault. It's a completely different story. But what I will definitely do, and the part that I will play, I'm uploading this video. I am going to try to correct some areas out there by sharing this video and maybe doing a shorter video of my immediate criticisms. In 2018, what I'm definitely going to do is once the rule sets come out, I'm going to analyze those rules. I'm going to put whatever research and talking to other people, winners, whatnot, and construct a video in the direction that people who do wish to enter, time management, project management, some of the things to consider when you're designing, laying out your model, choosing the models and all that would give you a slight advantage at least instead of being absolutely blind. A few tips and tricks. And I'll talk to some other people to see if they're prepared to make similar content, and just spread at least a positive word going out and at least a more of an informative word opposed to what's currently happening. Thank you very much for watching. This was very rambly, very long. I hope the message was clear, and some points might have been repeated a few times. If you're inclined to participate, participate. If you've participated before and passed, you built this huge, giant, crazy project and gone to full effort in more than 6 months to build something and you feel absolutely burnt out, maybe consider doing something that's is not as ambitious, something smaller, something easier. I think that Bandai is not exactly looking for something that's huge and multi-detailed and it's just this giant, insane juggernaut. There has been times when something has won that someone has only worked on it for a number of weeks. So maybe just something that's a little detailed, a little paint, a little something thrown at it and put on display that's a bit creative and just very well executed. Maybe some of us is just going far too heavy, ambitious and showy offy and just going really hard. We'll catch you guys next time. If you have any questions, dialogues, discussions, you want me to pick up on anything, leave it down below. I'm very happy to explore it. I hope it's opened up other people's understandings. It's helped people, and that maybe, just maybe, the whole situation can be pushed in a way that the competition is more fun, more fair, and the people that are trying to get things out of it achieve what they're trying to do with the correct communication. Catch you guys next time. Stay tuned for more content.